Good afternoon. Welcome to this special meeting of the Larkspur City Council. The first item on the agenda today is roll call. Would you, City Clerk, please call the roll?
Councilmember Kendall,
I am here.
Councilmember Hara,
Here.
Councilmember Way.
Here.
Vice Mayor Paulson.
Here.
Mayor Hilmer.
Here. As has been our custom, we will now say the Pledge of Allegiance. If you're able, please join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda this evening is public comment. Are there members of the public that would like to ask questions or make comments on items that are not on the agenda this evening?
I'm looking for any raised hands from our audience members. Anyone in the council chambers. And there's no public comment.
Thanks, Allison. We have a business item on our calendar this afternoon. There's one. It's item 3.1, consideration of temporary parklets and a parklet policy. Could we please have a staff report?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, members of the public. My name is Julian Skinner. I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Larkspur. So we have for you tonight an item on parklets. We've been before you a number of times before looking at parklets. And so I've got a very brief presentation today, just outlining the questions that are before you tonight. We do also have backup information available from previous presentations if we need to get into any of the details on any of the items. So primarily tonight, we're asking two questions. We're looking for direction on two items. The first is the temporary encroachment permits that are in place today for in right-of-way, on street, on sidewalk, dining, and parklets are all due to terminate on June 30th of this year, based on a deadline that was established at a prior council meeting. And so we've had a number of permittees that have come to us and asked if there's an opportunity to extend that deadline. And so that question is before you again tonight. Secondary to that is a question that we've brought before regarding parklets and what is the future of parklets in Larkspur. And so this question is here tonight, also not as pressing as the first item, but if folks are here to engage in a conversation with parklets, you may want to have a conversation about what do folks see for the long-term vision of parklets in Larkspur, not just the upcoming deadline for the temporary permits that are in place. So the first question is fairly simple. There's a date there. There's an extension of that date or not an extension. The second question has a number of components to it that we can get into should the conversation go in that direction. So at this point, I know we have a number of folks in the audience, so I will stop there and hand it back to the council.
Does the council have any questions for the Public Works Director or staff at this time?
I do.
Councilmember Way.
Do we have an assessment of what the other 11 cities and towns in Marin County are doing with their parklet policy?
In general, they're all about the same place that we are. They are still under the temporary guidelines, permits, sorry, and a number of them are working on permanent policies, but there hasn't been any commitments to date that those permanent policies would be adopted. So most of the other cities are working through it as we are, and they have some form of what a parklet policy may look like drafted, but there haven't been any significant actions on permanent policies moving forward to date.
Okay. I think if I recall, I think it's Mill Valley and Fairfax extended for a year or something like that at this point. I just trying to get a lay of the land on that.
Yeah, as far as the temporary permits go, I know there's a number that are this fall, October, November. There's one in the end of the calendar year. There's a few.
Okay. And are we looking at only the area on Magnolia from Ward to, what's this? This is Rice. No, wait, that's not Rice. What's this street here? King. Ward to King? Or are we looking at the entire length of Magnolia?
We've never
Ward.
restricted throughout the pandemic. We never once restricted where you could or couldn't have a parklet. We've never had an expressed interest from anywhere other than in the downtown.
Okay. That's it for now.
Other council member questions? Councilmember Harrow?
No, I'll refrain for now.
Vice Mayor Paulson, do you have any questions at this time? All right.
No questions right now. Thank you.
All right, thanks. I had one, but I've forgotten what it was. I guess we'll go to public comment and we'll bring it back to the council after we hear from the public. Allison, could you please let us know? I guess we could start in the council chambers.
It's your decision.
Why don't we start in the council chambers? Are there members of the public that would like to make comments or ask questions regarding this item? The gentleman in the middle and then the gentleman on over there.
Hello. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. I'm Frank Cayazzo from the Left Bank. I submitted a letter from a controller from the Left Bank for public record earlier. Also submitted a letter from Gary Woolley and signatures from Gary Woolley earlier to be part of the public. He's out of country and can't be with us here tonight. So I hope that makes it to all of you and are able to. I just want to thank you all, first of all, for having this meeting tonight and continuing this discussion, especially with the recent surge of COVID in Marin County. It's very important to me, my staff, investors in our business, and I think the town as a whole to have a safe place to dine with the unknowing of what COVID brings in the near future. The Parklet was created to address the acute need for outdoor dining during the pandemic, but we invested resources to make it special so that we can provide a space for the community to enjoy for many seasons. Of the people who patronize the Left Bank, we are sure many were able to enjoy not only our establishment, but we're also exposed to other fine establishments on that. Just this past Mother's Day, we served an additional 150 guests in the Left Bank Parklet that we would not have been able to serve on Mother's Day had it not been there. Those 150 people most likely still would have went out to eat on Sunday, just most likely not here in Larkspur, to a different city. I know that the Left Bank has contributed between $5,000 and $10,000 tax dollars to the city of Larkspur due to our increased revenues from the Parklet. But most importantly, I know people feel really safe coming to the Left Bank. And to me, I just want to keep it like on that level that none of this is truly over yet. Our business has to go through the ups and downs of it, just like everyone, and providing the safe place for people to dine is really important to us. I just want to say as well that we're willing to work with the city, in any way, shape, or form to keep it, to build anything that the city might like. We have no problem, contributing money to the city and whatever fair way the city would deem. So I don't, it rubs me the wrong way at times when we talk about just tearing them down with no real plan for the future. And that's where I was right now. See it benefiting anybody to destroy the hard work that the restaurants put in during the pandemic. I don't feel like the Parklet's going away for a couple additional parking spots makes downtown.
Wait.
I don't.
Okay.
I don't think, having those additional parking spots makes the downtown safer. I don't think having those additional parking spots makes more people want to come to Larkspur. I think the Parklets and the safe, fun places to celebrate and dine during a pandemic and during hard times, I think that's what makes people want to come to Larkspur. And then after they dine, they walk the streets, and everyone benefits from this new downtown Larkspur. Things that the restaurants and the businesses who almost went out of business, had to band together and do something. So I just want to close with, I'm super grateful that you're here discussing it. I want to contribute positively in any way that I can, any way whatsoever. And we could provide any information, help, anything that might be necessary to continue the road we're on. Let's see. So thank you.
Can I ask you a question? Would the West Bank be willing to participate in an improvement district organization for the downtown so that everybody operates on the same standards and has the same rules and contributes the same amount to an effort that collectively provides a program for the downtown for this that is,
The Left Bank would be more than happy to like start that conversation and, hear what that entails. Like the Left Bank would love to sit on our table and hear how that would work. The Left Bank looks at itself as a leader of the business community on that point.
that's great.
We just donated all food for the Larks last show. We contribute probably about $15,000 a year as a donation to Kick and another to Spark. Like any way that we could participate in community building and making Larkspur a more fun, vibrant, safe town, we would love to talk about that.
Thank you. And thank you for your comments.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Frank, I'm just curious. When people dine outdoors, is the inside of the restaurant less crowded? So is the inside packed as well as the outside tables packed, or is the inside relatively empty because people are not feeling safe inside and are choosing to go outside?
Well, on say Fridays and Saturday nights, the whole restaurant is filling up, but the outside fills up first, and people request the outside more so than they request the inside. And especially over the past 2 weeks, you see more and more people, wearing masks again, more and more people wanting to be outside. Some people won't come inside, so like they will still only eat outside.
Have you been able to like spread your tables out more because people are outside? I mean, has that affected the way the inside layout is at all?
Well, when there were restrictions, we had it, but as restrictions we've pushed our tables closer together. And, again, on a day like Mother's Day, we served over 600 people. So everything was full, so on those days, like that is, the people wouldn't be here. On say certain weekdays, lunchtime, we fill up, we're pretty busy every day. I was doing some math earlier with those numbers. We've served 22,000 people in the Parklet since we've opened it. Some of those people have been overflow, and they have a place, but other people just won't sit inside still, like they want to be outside.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate that.
Did you have a question, Kelly?
Just a quick question. Thanks for the presentation. Just out of curiosity, is the Left Bank a member of the Larkspur Chamber of Commerce?
Left Bank is in negotiations to become a member with the Larkspur Chamber of Commerce.
Is there a reason why it hasn't joined so far?
It was more of an accounting thing, but I have an agreement with them to be part of it.
Well, that's interesting. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Are there other members of the public tonight? The gentleman in the back there, you were next. Welcome. Please tell us who you are and where you live.
Elliot Magnuson. I'm owner operator of Mag's Local Yogurt and one of the recipients of the encroachment permit at a Parklet that was up briefly last year. And I want to thank you all for that because it was a lifesaver for us. And we had to go from self-service, which was kind of our shtick, to full service. And we served everybody through a side window and it was very impersonal. And people were, though, able to go outside in the Parklet and spread out and have that little sense of community. So it drew a lot of people to the business when we were struggling. And it kind of opened a lot of people's eyes, I think, to the fact that the downtown was kind of craving something like this. And that a lot of people, they don't want to eat inside when the weather's beautiful. I mean, you walk through Europe or any city in Europe that and a lot of their seating is outside, and it kind of brought that feeling to Larkspur by, I think a lot of people made comments to me that it just drew people in. There were more people walking, there were more people sitting, there were more people laughing. And we removed our Parklet for the construction of the street and the sidewalk. And in hopes that, we took it down in a puzzle form so that we could store it and put it back when it was done, because it was a really added benefit to not only my business, but I think the whole downtown. So I am just here to urge you guys to really consider coming back with a plan to reemerge the parklets, and I'd be glad to work with you guys on any kind of proposal or requirements to do so. But I think a lot of people in town believe that the benefits far outweigh, the need for a couple more parking places. Thank you.
Catherine?
What's your thoughts when the parklets were first put up during the COVID emergency, when all the restaurants were shut? Many of the designs were the entire length of the storefront of a business, of a restaurant. You have a very narrow footprint. You have only one storefront area that is really essentially one parking space.
It's two.
Is it two? Yeah, I guess. But some of the restaurants did 4 parking spaces, and some still have 3 or 4 left there now. How do you think we can reconcile that equity in that? Whether yours is a smaller size than the others, even though you are also in need of having extended spaces. How would you reconcile that? Would you make a minimum or a maximum size?
Well, yeah, it would, I think, have to mimic the actual business type. I mean, I'm a much smaller business than Ruli's across the street, where they take up 4 spaces and even more. They have a lot more traffic than I do, and they're open longer than I am. So I think they would, have to have a larger facility, where again, mine, the footprint is only 2 spaces. I'd be willing to go down to 1 just to keep that outdoor seating. But I think there's got to be some, some openness to the possibility of design and some sort of equality throughout the process.
What do you think about if everybody takes away 1 or 2 parking spaces and we end up with half the parking that we normally have downtown? How do you think that works?
Well, again, I think look at the numbers. There's 4 or 5 of us right now that have parklets. And if we each took 2 spaces, that's not a lot. I mean, yes, we have a problem with parking, but if people are willing to walk an extra block because they feel that the streets are open to walking and that
I walked downtown at lunch today. There was not 1 parking space available on the street or in the public parking lot. But the existing sidewalk tables, there weren't many people seated. So I'm wondering about demand and supply.
what sidewalk tables are we talking?
Just walking through the downtown, they're just,
There aren't any. I mean, we just had 3.
well, and Really's closed on Mondays. So
Yeah.
he didn't think he needed them today.
Well, it's 90 degrees too.
I wish I was over today. I'm close, but it is very weather dependent for us. When we've got great weather, we get the foot traffic. We want to sit outside.
You don't think there's a parking problem?
Oh, I categorically understand there's a parking problem.
All right, thank you.
But I believe that the benefits far outweigh the parking problems.
We're going to go around and then we'll see what it looks like. Is there anybody else in the chambers tonight that wants to make public comment? Yes, sir. Thanks very much for your comments. Welcome.
I live in Elena, portion of my wife. I've owned Gale since 2002. We got started in like 530, moved to 482 and expanded to 484. I'm gonna. I don't know if you saw it, but we are in Wall Street Journal said that small businesses project economy. Involved in stress. In retail, leadership. So Nice, nice to be on the same block. Increase foot traffic. And we're welcoming and happy to serve. So, our customers are people. They will notify them. All fashions. And they'll say, well, those customers are part of our business. And they represent factors. Reading. Recently, more and more people say, you know, I can't find a place to park. And those are the customers who can't. And nobody's arguing. Parking is stress. Parklets. And in addition, I want to compliment everybody who's trying to get somebody to do. That I stand one in the street, looking down, clean, or the other one, postcard wall. Aesthetic. Parklets are ugly. Really straw. When you try to do I don't think there are 9 retail groups. State, all selling high quality. Good merchandise. If their experience with Michael has the stress on parking has affected our business, affected the sales tax revenue get from us, whether in the parking cases or not, more or less than what we're paying from the Parklets. Some figures in terms of Parklets on that, but I hope that take the retail segment or come and look out.
Scott, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Could I ask you a question? Sure. Hypothetically, let's say, the council got together and we were able to come up with some way where for every parking space that was lost, a minimum of an additional parking space was created within 4 blocks, or something like that. Would that, do you think that would be a problem? Well, just within, I guess I'm trying to figure out for your customers. I mean, everybody would love to have a parking space right outside the store with their name on it. They just pull up, but hypothetically, if you have to park at all the way at the other end of Magnolia, it's a good couple block walk. So it's also, yeah. But I'm just thinking, if we were to expand our minds and try to think of a way to maybe make a deal with, some private businesses to get additional parking spots and still have the parklets, but replace the lost parking spots with additional parking spots. So the net would be 0.
My answer is biased because I really think the parklets are ugly.
That's my second question. I got another question about that.
I wouldn't probably give you a fair answer.
All right. So
4 blocks is
too much. Okay. And I guess my other question was, there were 2 things that you had mentioned. One was the parking spaces and one was the design of the parklets. So hypothetically, if we were to have some type of design review, so that anybody who built the parklet, it had to be within, approved as not being an eyesore and, blending with the community in a way that, we would want it to be. Is it the concept of the parklet, or is it kind of the eyesore that they were just put up?
No, the way it's been implemented certainly has something to do with it. I mean, on Ward Street, it looks like we've got 3 gypsy wagons. Roofs. I don't know how that fits in to my concept of the park. What Pico's done, they've got it bounded by some greenery and so forth, and it's kind of minimized it. I think they've implemented it in a better way. But just the wood structure, temporary clumsy look of it, I think it detracts significantly from what you've accomplished with the beautification of Larkspur. And I don't think that does Larkspur any good in the long run. Because I think it's yet to be recognized fully what you've accomplished in terms of the publicity and so forth. But I think will be forthcoming once photographers and others are able to fully get the word out.
Thank you. I appreciate you answering my questions.
Thank you very much. Gentleman in the front. We're going to make a round of comments, and this isn't really a debate. It's a public comment. So I'll ask you to. Can we check with Vice Mayor Paulson that he can hear the public speaker?
Yeah, it's fine.
To Lee's presentation, we happen to be right next door to his business. Margaret has been there for 20 some years. And I think what we are losing vision of is the whole downtown. Frank is a great promoter of that bank. I patronized his business for 25 years, so still do it. And we're making COVID the culprit of our problems. I have talked to businesses who have done tremendously well during COVID due to smart business decisions. And the revenues have not decreased as all being presented all over. Takeout has picked up the slack, what they have lost otherwise. And I can name businesses who are unfortunately not here tonight. So I think we should look also at small business, such as retail, small gift shops, and so forth, who are part of the equation, making a city and the downtown viable, pretty. And compliments should be paid to the city of Larkspur to make downtown beautiful. Tons of money has been spent. Sidewalks have been expanded. As Mr. Mayor just mentioned, there's plenty of space to put extra tables out there and make it a truly downtown European kind of environment. I happen to be European. Let me tell you something. None of these parklets would have a chance to ever be erected anywhere in Europe. What are the design requirements in terms of height, size, exterior, and so forth? There seems to be no conformity anywhere. In all due respect, Frank, put this parklet out there and the colors. Let me tell you something. Nobody would paint in Europe the parklet and the color the thing that we painted. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's ugly. It's outright ugly. And we want to beautify downtown, make it viable for everyone, not just for special interest groups. And of course, there's a great audience you can draw from to get momentum. We don't have it. Market is a one-man show. Taylor has 2 people working there. But we have an intricate part of downtown. And parking, as we all know, is beating this horse to death. This is such. There are controls, 2 hours parking. You know, and it's all loosey goosey. If you run a business, I think it should be based on numbers and not on emotional kind of thing.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Um,
Catherine, did you have a question?
My question is for Julian. A lot of comments have been made about the streetscape being enhanced. Can you elaborate on what the further enhancements are planned? Because I know we're back ordered on tree grates and benches and things like that. Will there be more enhancements? And the second question is the comment that this gentleman just mentioned, the opportunity with a widened sidewalk to put more tables on the sidewalk. Are our sidewalks that much wider? I don't recall widening them that much.
So firstly, with the project that was approved and is 99% constructed out there, what's missing is, yes, tree grates. And then some benches and some bike racks are the only missing components. And then there will be electrical receptacles in the tree grates too for future tree lighting. As far as the widened sidewalks, within an inch or two, the sidewalks and curbs are in the same place they were before the project. They only changed elevation wise for ADA. They did not change in dimension horizontally.
What are the sidewalk dimensions, the width?
I would have to look that up. It's on one of the slides in one of the backup information. I want to say they were, they're not consistent. They're somewhere between 10 and 12 feet.
Yeah, I was going to say 11.
Yeah.
There's probably a little bit of a visual element because for years the concrete was multicolored. Now it's all nice, pristine,
And it's,
one color.
and it's clear. I mean, it's clear of clutter. So 11 feet and a public path of travel within that sidewalk minimally is what, 4?
By code, it needs to be 4 feet. Sometimes you go a little wider if the street is busy.
And the curb to the tree is what, 2?
To the tree grate, I believe. I don't know that it's consistent, but the trees are roughly 3 or 4 feet off the curb line.
But there's roughly 5 feet up against the buildings where tables could be placed,
Yes.
which is a consistent dimension along the whole street.
And is that the same on both sides of the street?
Yeah, the sidewalk within a foot is the same width on both sides of the street, although the building faces go back and forth, so it's not consistent. It's around 11 feet plus minus.
If I recall, Red Robins used to have dining out in front of it too.
Yeah, they had tables tucked up against the window and they still could on that property. Other members of the public tonight in the council chambers that would like to make public comment. Hi. Identify yourself and where you live.
First of all, I wanted to thank Julian and Public Works for the good job. I supported much wider sidewalks, the wider option, that big job on the sidewalks are there, and there's plenty of, you know, not very well, but they're pretty narrow. And we're lost for some of this. House. Is that better? Okay, is that better? Oh, there we go. We've lost some of our livability, and that's partly because the town now appeals to a lot of people. We have a lot of people coming into the town. Parking is a huge issue with it. I live right across from St. Pat's and I can't park half the time. So I'm mindful of the parking issues. But I really support the parklets because we need space where we can gather that is just not a little narrow sidewalk. I'm at Ruley almost every day, and we're at a lot of these shops. We support all of our local businesses, and I think taking out the parklets, I know they had to go because of the construction,
they really ought to go back in, and I'd like to see that happen. I'd like to see much better quality parklets, not a uniform standard that the city sets out, because I think each one should be unique, but something with a design review so that they're of higher quality materials and a little bit better. I think they ought to be available to the public, especially something like Ruley, where it's right downtown, or Meg's, where this is sort of a gathering place for us all to be. And we really don't, with the loss of those now, we have this little narrow sidewalk. And if you're trying to also park a bike in there someplace, I'm not sure, no bike parking out on the street. I know there will be a few more bike places to lock your bike, but it's really narrow. And, many of the times going through Larkspur, I look down the street as I'm going down on my bicycle, and it's wall-to-wall cars and it's wall-to-wall parking. And that's basically become what Larkspur is. And I hate to see that be our future. It needs to be much more livable. And I think with our restaurants, we attract that. I think it helps the rest of the businesses. I'm not one of the other businesses owners, but I know when we're at Ruley's, we're looking at the shops around there. So I think it does help the businesses. So I would urge the council to keep parklets and have some design review on them.
Thank you very much. Herman, we'll go do a second round of comments once we do the first. Are there other members of the public in the council chambers? Herman, we're gonna wait.
I'll make it very quick. Can I, Mr. Mayor?
You're breaking protocol,
Oh,
please.
I'm sorry. Okay, all right.
I'll give you a chance. Are there other members of the public in the chambers that would like to make comments this afternoon? Allison, are there people in the queue online?
Yes.
Who's got their hand up?
Yes, I see Vice Mayor Paulson's hand up. If you'd like to hear from him first.
Vice Mayor Paulson, you have a question?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Mayor. I'm trying to get a little more background. This is for Julian as well. I tried to do, first question is about, parking and trying to assess what the supply and demand are. So I did the same exercise, walking around and seeing what was empty and so forth. Is there any possibility, for some simple technology like a camera, on Ward and Magnolia, which could take some shots at different hours and give us an objective understanding what the parking situation is? And second, this is jumping ahead a little bit, but for design review, have we looked at what San Francisco or any of the other Marin cities have done as far as the ability of parklets to be assembled and disassembled more easily, so that it's not seen as an all or nothing? So if the Lark Theater has a movie coming up and they need parking, or there's something like 4th of July, parklets can come down without a huge effort to the owner. Is there any information about those two things? Thank you.
Sounds like picnic tables. Julian?
Yeah, so I can respond. As far as parking goes, we have not undertaken a parking study. It is something that could be undertaken. It's not funded in our budget at the moment, so I would need direction through the city manager if that's something we're interested in. Again, with COVID, wherever it is and things like that, a lot of parking studies and traffic studies are taken with a grain of salt these days. So we'd have to understand the baseline that we're working with and the time period that we wanted, if we wanted to get any meaningful data back. And yes, there are surveys these days that are done with cameras, so they're less people intensive, but you still need a person to crunch data. So there is a cost involved there. I don't have a cost, but I could come back with a cost if there were interest. As far as the modular parklets, yes, most municipalities that have a parklet program, and the ones that had programs that predated COVID, all require some sort of modular construction. Even in the most permanent of parklets, there is from time to time the need to do street work. Sometimes there's utilities, may not necessarily be a utility cover like a manhole cover under a parklet, but there often are regardless utilities that run under the street. And so Most of the Parklet policies that I have seen have a requirement in there for some sort of modular Parklet. Now, for the most part, that doesn't mean you can take them apart by hand in a day. They still probably would require a forklift, but they don't require a lot of disassembling. They simply require unfastening, but then typically, a forklift or something like that to remove. That is in most of the policies that we've seen, and we likely would want that from an operation standpoint too for the street.
Thank you very much. Allison, are there members of the public in the queue that would like to make comment? I just want to say, in listening to the public comment this evening, I had heard repeatedly, consistent with one speaker this evening, that the downtown looks really, really beautiful. And it's always followed with, don't screw it up. Allison, who's in the queue?
Our first commenter will come from James Holmes.
Good evening, James.
James Holmes, Larkspur. As long as COVID continues to spike and surge, I certainly think that there should be reasonable extensions for maybe 9 months at a time. With regard to permanent, to me, the big picture is that downtown Larkspur, unlike almost every other place where parklets predominate, is a very small, constrained 2-block area with a single, relatively narrow street where even someone parallel parking can back up traffic. Therefore, parklets have a much more intrusive effect logistically, parking-wise, visually, and otherwise than in almost all other places where you see them. On the other hand, as I think has been mentioned, downtown Larkspur's sidewalks are broad enough for small tables or seating, as at Ruli's and formerly at Red Robin and at Mags. So I don't see a great urgency for permanent parklets. I think all the other reasons that have been mentioned at various times for regarding problems with parklets remain: the already scarce parking, the preference for one type of business, restaurants, over other types of businesses, and for one type of customers, able-bodied restaurant goers over all other customers, the privatization of public space, the little use in winter. I'm concerned about requiring a whole new city regulatory design program, while sometimes the city seems to struggle to carry out its current programs. I think for all these and other reasons, parklets on Magnolia should continue to be an emergency expedient rather than a permanent obstruction. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Allison, are there other members of the public in the queue?
Looking for any additional raised hands from our audience members. And there's no further public comment.
Okay, Frank, let you.
I want to make it very short, Mr. Mayor. Ruli has been referenced several times, and I support Ruli's. We're right next door. They're a great drawing card. They really draw people to downtown. Has a study been made whereby the store frontage of Ruli's, where one section has been unoccupied for 20 years, putting a couple of tables there on the side going towards the peso, putting some tables there and adding, I would say off the top of my head, 20 seats. How much would they gain putting up this parklet, which gives them maybe a maximum of maybe 10, 15 seats, which are ugly, unsupervised, at nighttime, a hangout for the peso people going home, trying to find shelter and saying goodnight to each other. The beautification which has taken place over the last year downtown is unbelievable. And now we're doing everything trying to ruin it by putting an ugly, in Europe, they would say a chicken coop up there. I mean, I cannot comprehend how this is possible, that we're having this kind of discussion. Rudy has a hard time taking care of the people right now. They're needing a parklet where they have to run across the sidewalk, feeding the people, where they have to clean tables and rearrange things and clean things up. whereby they could have a very smooth kind of a arrangement along their storefront with beautiful little tables. Doesn't have to be benches with 8 or 10 people, twos and twos and twos. Be referencing Europe, that would never happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Yes, sir.
So I just wanted to touch on the parking, and I find it hard to accept that we're going to say that there's a parking problem in Larkspur without any sort of research or any sort of.
My research is that,
No, I understand, but you know what I mean? Like when Gabe said we could actually do real parking research and see what.
no, I'm going to give you solid fact research.
Okay,
The left bank provides no parking at all on site
but I'm not talking about that.
for the restaurant.
No, I'm not talking about that.
I am.
But I'm not.
So talking about parking is really important in this context.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying to have the city do some research on the parking instead of just saying we have a parking issue. Does like San Anselmo not have a parking issue? Does Sausalito not have a parking issue? I live in Fairfax. It's hard to park. Guess what? On Saturday and Sunday in Fairfax, when all the bikers come into town and everyone loves it, it's even harder to park. We're not having Fairfax council meetings of how to get the bikers out of there so we could all park. So my point is to do some research on it and have some professionals like give us some ideas of what to do about the so-called parking problem might benefit us instead of just saying, oh, these 8 spots are the problem. I know that I watch people park in the lot across from the left bank every day and leave their car there for 8, 10, 12 hours. I see people park their car there and get on the bus and leave Larkspur and come back in the day and get on and get in their car. If we had paid parking, you know, there would be more parking in Larkspur.
My point is,
Nobody comes to Larkspur because the parking is free.
my point is the left bank operates currently
But this
under the
isn't a
good,
left bank meeting.
under
This
the
isn't-
good
this isn't-
graces
this-
of the
this-
city of Larkspur.
I know, but this
because-
isn't a left bank. meeting.
Because it's a non-conforming use.
But this still isn't a left bank meeting. This is a Parklet meeting. So like, as Herman could say, I'm not lecturing you about parking. I'm saying like, we've never done any study on parking in Larkspur. And it's
We have done several studies on parking. in
I'm
Larkspur.
just saying, they didn't say that. Gabe just asked and they said no.
Not current.
Okay, so my point is, and all I'm saying is that to do studies on parking and take our time, do you really think that parking wasn't a problem before the parklets? Like if there's a parking problem and they go away, it's not like there's gonna be parking. You know, the problem also is you have guys like this who run retail stores that say they don't care about their new guests. You know, I run a business and I care about my new guests that come. I'm not trying to survive off the guests we had 25 years ago. I'm trying to get more people to come to Larkspur, not just the people that came 20 years ago. You know, if they don't feel like having more people in town is going to increase their businesses, like that's just, that's beyond business. Like the more people we could have come to Larkspur, you know, the more business for everyone, the more dollars spent everywhere. So like this, I don't own the left bank. Like me and you shouldn't have like an issue between the left bank. Like I run a business in Larkspur.
Well, we might ask for your property owner to support what you're proposing. That's a big deal.
My property owner.
Yeah.
I mean,
Your landlord.
You're allowed to ask any landlord anything you want, but none of them are here. You know, I come because I care about the town. Like, you know, I put $100,000 into that ugly parklet because I care about the town. I'll put $100,000 more into it because I care about the town. I'm not sitting here being like, oh, Herman and this guy, they shouldn't have a store and they shouldn't put things out front because my customers like don't know. The more people that could come to town, the more parking that we could find, the safer that we could make the town. You know, you just had a gentleman up here saying that he loves like the camaraderie in the town, the celebratory nature in the town, the people smiling in the town. You know, if some of the retail businesses are struggling while there's more people in the town than ever before, they need to look in the mirror. You know, not across the street of the people bringing people into the town. They need to make their businesses better.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just to be fair to Left Bank, none of the downtown businesses have parking that I recall. I mean, Gala doesn't have parking.
Yeah.
It's an old town.
No,
There's no parking lots.
I was here for the planning permitting of the left bank.
Well,
The
I'm
the
just saying,
approval was based on shared parking with another property. and that was taken
There's
away.
no other property there. It's just the left bank. There's no, my Parklet's not near.
Thank you.
anywhere else.
Thank you for your
Look at
comments.
it. I mean, it just seems like you have a personal issue with it.
Would you,
It just feels like you and Mayor Harv have personal issues more so than my.
That's not true. That's not true. That
Do you
has to.
think that having the parklets makes it safer during times of COVID? Do you think eating outside is safer than eating inside?
Thank you for your comments.
But I do appreciate you're calling me the mayor still.
can I ask, to the mayor, would you imagine you brought up a downtown improvement district study. Would parking be included in that, do you believe?
Absolutely. City manager.
I want to clarify because there may be some confusion on what I heard, what I think I heard Vice Mayor Paulson asked, what the Director of Public Works answered and what's now being discussed. We have numerous parking studies that they're getting a little dusty, but we have numerous parking studies. And they all are going to say that based on the formulas that you're supposed to use to require businesses to provide parking, Larkspur is severely underparked because, to Councilmember Way's point, very few of the businesses provide parking consistent with what would be asked of them under normal standards. So they all have variances of some form, allowing them to operate with less parking. What I think Vice Mayor Paulson asked was, could we do real-time data of on-street parking on the side streets? That's what I thought I heard him say, which is what the Director of Public Works, I think, was answering, was putting cameras up to see if people are actually parking on the side streets or whether that's a viable place for people to be. And we don't have that kind of study. We've never, I'm not, in my time here, we've never done any sort of analysis like that. But I don't want, because I hear a lot of banding about, and those are really different concepts. Every study we have is going to say that by the uses, there should be more parking.
We have
The real-time use of the side streets, I don't know. that
We
have
can
anything
do
like that.
cameras. We can do any sort of analysis you want. We have decades of letters from the neighborhoods surrounding the downtown that the side streets are full of employee parking from the restaurants.
I'm not here to make that argument one way or the other, Mr. Mayor. I simply feel that there was some confusion in the public discourse and I wanted to clarify.
Are there, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to be sure I communicated clearly. We welcome people into the store, whether they've been there or not, and whether they come to Ruli's. And I think I made that clear that we're not only after customers who've been there 20 years. That's a mischaracterization. And I resent it, frankly. But also I was going to rise to talk a little bit about this parking study. I did my own parking study on Friday at 9:30 in the morning. I went to the main lot, took pictures of every car parked, took pictures of every car parked on Ward. Same thing with Magnolia, up to, is it Core Street, Cone Street, can't remember the name. I went back at 12:30, took the pictures, same pictures again. Went back at 4:30, took the same pictures again. But you're welcome to them if you want them. But they're quite revealing in that there are quite a number. There are a few cars that are in the morning picture and the afternoon picture in the same place. I think that speaks to enforcement and people who are just creating part of the problem we have by parking there all day. And there were also quite a few cars that showed up in the photographs that were outside. I purposely went more than 2 hours apart in the pictures I took. So there is some enforcement issues here which are contributing largely to the problem. I have a question. One of the other places I took pictures of was up Donut Alley. And of course, I've forgotten how many spots there are in there. There were two that looked like they were public spots, even though the sign says no public parking. I believe there were two out of the 30 or 40 that are in there. But there's also half a football field in the middle there that could be made available for parking if the town needed to lease the land or something. I don't know if you've looked at that, but there's a lot of open space in that area.
Well, that's private parcel.
Well, that's what I mean. If you could possibly lease it from the landlord and make it available to the public.
Yes, sir.
Not to unnecessarily drag out this meeting, I think in general, we're extremely spoiled when it comes to parking. Everybody likes to park in front of a store and walk in and shop, okay? I have 2 cars. We don't have parking in front of our building. I have never spent more than 5 minutes to find a parking spot in Larkspur for the last 20 years. I think we have to come to a realization that it might not always be convenient to park whenever you want to park at a certain given time, but you got to expect that people are somewhat mobile to walk maybe 200 feet, 300 feet, 400 feet to go to a store and get back to their car and leave. But I think a critical point is to enforce the 2-hour parking. If you don't move cars, others can't come in. And this has been a huge hit and miss kind of a thing as long as I can remember, because I got tickets myself and I know now where to park so I don't get a ticket. But it will alleviate this subject. 2-hour parking, going ticket. Let me tell you, you move cars and this parking subject will be mute. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Are there other members of the public that would like to make comments on this item before I close public comment and bring it back to the council?
I do see that there are some more raised hands on Zoom. Michael Dennis.
All right. Welcome.
I have an interesting pop-up here. Michael Dennis, it does say you're using an older version of Zoom. So, well, I'll try, I can promote him to a panelist. We'll give that a try at the moment. Michael, you'll need to accept that.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, my name is Michael. I am the owner of Redwood Barbershop, which is directly across from Ruli's and on the other side of Mag's Yogurt. And I do want to call attention to the council that we do have private parking spaces in back of our businesses. There are 4 businesses. We have a total of 12 spaces that are private parking spots, and there are clear signs that mark that they are for our customers. It's Redwood Barbershop, Salon for Excellence, which is new, excuse me, and Liberty Group. And we have always had problems with people using our parking spots as they wish. And it especially got really, really bad during the pandemic when the parklets went up because it took a lot of parking away off the street. At my barbershop, we service about 4 to 6 people an hour, and we work on an appointment system. So when people can't find parking, they expect to be able to come and park in a parking spot and walk into the barbershop. And when they can't find parking, they have to go around town and find a parking spot, you know, but they might be 5 to 10 minutes late. But what that ends up doing is it starts pushing our schedule back all day long, and then we're playing catch up all day long. People make appointments for a reason. So that, you know, they have like meetings to go to or to pick up their children. So when we're running 15, 20 minutes behind, everyone else is behind also. I've gone out in the parking lot because our spaces are used heavily by Ruli's and Mag's Yogurt. And we ask people to move. We've been verbally assaulted, backed into, yelled at, ignored. People just do not care. They just will park where it clearly says it's private parking for these businesses only. They don't care. They'll just park there and they'll be at Ruli's for 2 hours, an hour and a half, drinking coffee. And it makes my business very, very difficult to run. So I just want to call the council's attention to that. This isn't all about restaurant dining. So I don't know what the solution is, but we really need our private spaces for our customers.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.
Allison, are there other members of the public in the queue?
I'm looking for any additional raised hands from our Zoom audience members. There's no further public comment.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the council for discussion. Catherine, would you like to start?
I just think Gary and Jeannie Rulli's name has been brought up a lot, and I just wanted to make sure we acknowledge that they did put public comment in, including a letter and a petition signed by several hundred people. So that should be in the online agenda packet, but since their name has been brought up a lot, I think it's important that we acknowledge that they did submit a public comment and a very large packet of signatures in support of Parklets.
Would you like to weigh in on the two questions put to the council tonight, or would you like to wait until everybody has a round of comment? Scott?
I just had a question before we start our discussion here. I wanted to maybe pose it to the city manager. It's been brought up a couple of times about parking, about lack of enforcement. And I was curious in our history and as well as currently, do we enforce 2-hour parking? If we don't, is it a cost reason that we, the cost of hiring somebody to, chalk people's tires and come back and issue tickets is a prohibitive? Have we considered meters? I mean, these are all options that I think, even though the topic isn't parking, it's very related. And I think it should be kind of a holistic approach that we take. So I'm curious where we are with that.
For the most part, we use police cadets to enforce parking for a variety of reasons. Right now, that resource isn't necessarily available to us every day. So you take your chances on whether or not you're going to get a ticket or happen to be on a day where a police cadet's not available to chalk the downtown all day long. So I guess I'm disclosing in public. You can roll the dice and see if you're on a good day or a bad day. But when I first got here, the council asked me to convene a parking committee that met quite a bit, 2 members of the council, members of businesses. It was actually probably the most animated and argumentative meetings I've managed in my career.
And I'm sorry, what year is that?
2011. At that time, I would say that the participants from various businesses in downtown couldn't agree on much of anything, let alone how, if we did enforcement all the time, how many hours it should be. 2 hours, 3 hours, those were fighting words. Whether we should even have it, whether we should have meters. We've done research on meters before. Those are all options available to council. Just, I would say if you want to go to uniform daily enforcement, then, we'll have to hire a full-time person for the town to make, it's for the city to make that work. So.
And then just a follow-up question. As far as leasing private property, like the city leasing private property for parking purposes, do you have any ballpark of cost per space that something like that would be?
So the property that was mentioned by the gentleman is complicated because it's actually not one property. It's actually like 2 with some really convoluted property lines. So you'd be dealing with 2 separate people to try to lease that space, which doesn't mean it's impossible. It's just a little more challenging. And then my pipe dream since I've been here is that somehow we could get somebody who works for AT&T to realize it's not a threat to maybe work with us to do something on that property, which is heavily underutilized. And then the other property that comes up from time to time is the property next to the city's parking lot, which is just kind of a vacant weed lot. But we haven't found the property owner particularly interested in having any conversation with us. In fairness to the property owner, I think the concern is entrenching that as a long-term use might prevent them from some development opportunities down the road. So those are the three private conversations that have occurred, if we're counting AT&T as private.
If there was, and I'm, thinking the property with the Pete's Place, that there just seemed to be like a tremendous number of unused parking spaces in a shopping center like that. Do you have any idea kind of the going rate? If we wanted to lease 10 parking spots, what that would cost if the property owner was willing to do it?
I don't know what the going rate would be. Most of the agreements I've seen where you negotiate shared parking in a shopping center, usually it's a give and take. There's something the shopping center needs or wants, so you kind of work out a balanced approach. But I'm sure if I did a little research, I could certainly find cities that have done some sort of shared parking arrangement. That center is also tricky because, again, there's multiple parcels actually, even though from the public's perception, it's one shopping center. It's actually carved into, counting our piece, to 4 different pieces. So it's a funny deal. So you'd be trying to coordinate all of that and getting everybody on the same page.
Thank you.
Other council members have comments or questions before we answer the questions put to us in the staff report? Vice Mayor Paulson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I feel like well, first, I just wanted to thank all the stakeholders. I mean, hearing from everybody, the different merchants and, city members and all that has been hugely helpful. And I'm glad for the conversation. I also feel it's a conversation we've been having for 2 years, and the costs and benefits are sort of repeating themselves. And I think they were summarized pretty well already. I feel like we have sort of 3 things in front of us. The, most dynamic and changeable is COVID itself. And for all we know, it could increase and we'd be back to where we were, in shelter in place. And what's been going on for years is the parking situation. And what we haven't really gotten into are sort of the design standards. And I'd love to hear more input there. Maybe from the heritage people to really see what might be possible, and from Public Works, about modularity and finding a way where this doesn't have to be black or white, we have a parklet or not. But with that being said, I would look forward to more conversation, more information, and I'm leaning, given the weather and the uncertainties of COVID, I'm leaning towards extending the deadline, but I also don't see this as a permanent move. I think what we really need to do is tease apart the issue of parking, the issue of design standards, the issues of equity, and it might be a good time frame to to set a deadline, perhaps for the fall or when the weather becomes less friendly, and really have those issues answered by then, and give staff some time to do the research.
Can I ask you a question, Vice Mayor Paulson?
Yes, please.
Certainly, you're not suggesting our new downtown be cluttered with putting back the old parklets that were up before.
I mean, I think,
we can do better than that, can't we?
I think if clutter means how they were designed, like it was a pretty motley, set of 2x4s and traffic barriers and plants and whatnot. That gets into the issue of aesthetics. So I think you also raised an interesting point about the width, and the 11 minus 4 giving us 7 feet, and the creative solutions. So I'm not quite there to say, let's just extend the deadline, but I see good reasons, and I do think aesthetics could be taken into account. So maybe we precede it by a better discussion about design standards or a stronger policy.
Councilmember Candell.
Thanks. Well, I respect your use of leading questions. I think the issue that we
The
have.
mayor is not a lawyer. but-
I think the issue that we have is we have a balance right now, or at least when this started, when the pandemic started, there was a pseudo emergency, and it was, we need these up quick to help these businesses survive. We're going to put the design, we're going to make that secondary. We want the business to survive, and then we'll come back and figure out how we want to make them pretty. And the question is right now, are we still in that emergency? And if we feel that we are still in that emergency, then we say, you know what? Aesthetics, yes, the downtown is going to look beautiful, but we're going to survive a non-beautiful downtown for 6 months for the benefit of keeping our businesses alive because we need outdoor dining or whatever our original reason was. If that original reason is still there, you know, we're making that choice and we're putting aesthetics second to survival of the businesses. If we say, you know what, we're not really in the pandemic anymore, it's time to address, you know, the aesthetics of the business, then we can have that conversation as well. But I think they're two separate conversations.
I can speak to that. I have today's latest COVID update from Marin County is 385 additional positive cases reported. I mean, that's just what's recorded and reported to the public health department. I mean, 128 active cases, 7 new hospitalizations. So to your point, I don't think we're through COVID yet. And I think we have to really, originally, these parklets were put up to have the businesses survive because all the restaurants had to close their doors. Now they're open, but COVID is still within our community. And I think we have some real uncertainty what's going to happen in the fall. Everything that I've read is that there may be new variants that will arrive this summer and possibly rise again in the fall. It's unlikely that we'll go through a total shutdown because we have a very high vaccination rate, but we still have a lot of members of our community that are older, that have underlying conditions that won't dine inside. So do we provide them an opportunity to still engage with the community until COVID has really come into a full cycle of exiting? And I'm not sure we have that information. I know a lot of communities are returning to indoor face coverings and masks now. The schools in Oakland just decided all kids have to wear masks again. So we're still in a transitional time, in my opinion. Just as far as safety is concerned, I'd prefer to err on a side of safety for our vulnerable community. So let's keep talking.
Councilmember Hariff.
I'd like to actually call the question. We have 2 questions in front of us. Sorry, I'm not close enough to the mic. One is whether we should provide an extended expiration date for the current outdoor dining permits. So that's one question. The second question that has been presented to us by staff is whether or to what extent we should direct staff to take steps to establish a further policy with respect to parklets. And I think we should address them both separately. And I hope that we can.
All right.
So just
Would you like to begin, Kevin?
can I just ask a question about the existing permits that expired June 30th? So people have if tomorrow Gary Ruley wants to put that parklet back up, he still has that opportunity until June 30th. Is that right?
The parklets that were on Magnolia that were removed for the ADA project have not been cleared to return yet. We're still working on some final details with the contractor, and we have not given the green light for those parklets to return yet.
Kevin, would you like to begin? I'm sorry, Dan Schwartz.
I did also want to chime in. I think Julian, correct. We are going to be doing another phase on Magnolia. So there's at least one parklet that's going to need to be removed when we do our next road construction. Is that correct?
Yes, so the parklets were removed between Ward and King for the previous project. As soon as we're satisfied everything's okay with the asphalt and the concrete, we'll release those permits open again. So that's Mags and Rulies. But there is another project that's been awarded to a contractor to repave the rest of Magnolia. So that will require Pico's Parklet to be removed. And we've already been in conversation with him about the date that that would be required.
So before, did you have more comment, Dan? Before Kevin takes us to the question, I do have one suggestion that there is a relationship between the two questions in my mind. Because I believe that it's worth organizing this properly and bringing it back properly and organized with everybody working as a team, including the merchants and stakeholders as a district formation. That's very different than just letting everybody do their thing. So I think forming that's going to take a lot of work, and I think we need to take the time to do it right. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kevin.
Look, can I just ask a question on that? Can you elaborate on what, I have not been on the council when we've done an improvement district.
We have never done an improvement district.
What do you imagine that it looks like? I mean, that process.
It's not unlike having a heritage district. You have a project area and you have standards and you have participatory agreements, and I would expect this could include parking. There would be participation by all the property owners. So the city's not on, being burdened with everything. So there's a cost sharing that comes into play down the line. And the Heritage Board has a chance to work with the downtown in a more organized way as to make sure that the district is maintained.
Okay.
Kevin?
So, Mr. Mayor, again, I'll repeat my request to call the question on both the items that are on the agenda today. And I appreciate your comments that they are linked. They are, but they are also separate. And I would be prepared to make a motion on both of them, but I would invite my fellow council members to take advantage of the opportunity to make their own separate motion, because I'm not sure we'll all agree. So would anyone like to take up my invitation?
Sure. I will make a motion that the parklets are extended for, say, June, July, September, October, November. Sure. But through the end of the year, through December 31st, in order to, and while we are extending those and while they're operating, that would give us an opportunity to direct staff to come back with some answers to have a policy in place for the beginning of the year.
Can I clarify?
Sure.
Does your motion include allowing Parklet construction that was there previously to go back up as was before?
Yes.
So is that a motion?
That is my motion.
Is there a second?
I'd like to make a friendly amendment if I can.
Yeah, I'd like to also.
Yeah, I think I'm leaning a little bit in hearing the mayor. I think that, I've already said, and I think Councilmember Way has articulated it really well. I mean, there's good reasons to continue this, but I think, we have more breathing room, and there have been a lot of concerns that have been brought up, and we have until June 30th, which is, still a month and a half or a month and a week. So, my friendly amendment would be to at least have some contingency of design standards. And I don't think we'll have time for the parking, so I'll have to leave that out. So just, something to see that Heritage could maybe weigh in on one meeting, and perhaps planning, perhaps Public Works.
All right.
I'm reflecting on the city manager's earlier description of no one being able to agree on anything.
Yeah, I'm concerned that's a little amorphous. That I think it's a long shot that we are going to have a design review plan in a month that everybody's going to agree on, and I just think that's a little optimistic.
Perhaps we could say, we extend it for 3 months, and that gives us 3 months to do this, and then we could do a simple vote. It wouldn't have to be this elaborate discussion.
Well, for the lack of a second to a motion, I'm going to just also say, I think the aesthetics between now and when we do come back with an answer are very important. I think putting stuff back up the way it was before, not going to be acceptable.
So I think I'll just play parliamentarian since that's part of my role. I think where we are right now is that Councilmember Candell has made a motion. Councilmember Paulson has offered a friendly amendment, which I would say has not been accepted. But I believe Councilmember Way also wanted to offer a friendly amendment to the motion on the floor. So I just wanted to clarify that since Mr. Mayor, it sounded like you were moving towards saying that the motion had died. So I just wanted to give Councilmember Way an opportunity to make her friendly amendment, see if it's accepted, and then move forward from there.
Councilmember Way.
I'm glad Mr. Holmes weighed in because Mr. Holmes weighs in on lots of things, and he weighed in at his first comment was he thinks it should be extended until COVID is in better maintained. I like what you said, Scott, but I think we need to put some parameters on the structures because putting back what was there before, I don't think aesthetically is appealing at all for some of them. And I think we need to talk about size reduction in some of the structures taking up 4 parking places. That may be what, if we're going to temporarily return these until December 31st, which is what you said, maybe they take up a maximum of 2 spaces per business entity. That sounds like Mag's is 2 spaces, Ruli's was 4. But if we agree to allow them to return, can we put a size adjustment on them? They have to be ADA accessible too, and we need to make sure that they are appropriately accessible to the ADA requirements. What do you think of that?
Can I ask staff, realistically, the time frame, if we wanted to have some type of design reviews that was an objective standard that we can apply to everybody evenly, how long realistically is that going to take us?
So thank you. That's kind of what I think we need to discuss. So if the council wanted one option, there are communities that have adopted design standards. So if you wanted to do this expeditiously, my recommendation would be that we bring you 1 or 2 or 3 samples from communities that have adopted design standards, and you could see if those were design standards you felt could work in Larkspur. And I think I hear 2 things being talked about. One's the aesthetic look, and the second is the size. And those are kind of, the size is an easy one. I think you just tell us how many spaces any individual business should be allowed to have. I will admit the term that's giving me the biggest pause is heritage, because I can't figure out what that conversation is. I don't see that there's anything heritage here. So you'd be asking the Heritage Board, I guess, if it deters from what they see as the historical aesthetic, maybe, but otherwise, given their role in our code, you're asking them to step out of that role. So you would need to be clear with staff what you want us to define as the Heritage Board's role, because there is no role for them in our code for this particular issue. So that's not to say we shouldn't. I'm just saying you'll have to be very specific what it is you want them to do.
I think if I may, I'm going to withdraw my motion. Is it okay? And I'm going to replace it with another motion, given all the information that I've got.
Sure, but I do want to clarify one thing regarding what the city manager just said. I do think Heritage would be very interested in playing a role in their typical role of weighing in on how improvements either support or detract from the district character. It's easy to see if there's a structure in the street that has not been reviewed by Heritage that blocks seeing 150 feet of building elevation in the historic downtown. I think they have a pretty strong opinion about that because it's not in conformance with the character of the district. It's easy to say. And I think any furnishings or structures that do come back should have their review and at least clearance, if not assistance in recommendation.
Again, Mr. Mayor, I am not arguing with you. When we go through this process, we will need you to be very clear because I don't necessarily agree with you that the code is at all clear that they have the role. So doesn't mean the council can't give them the role. It just needs to be specified because it's going to be hard for your staff to fairly engage an applicant if we don't know the role of all the players. That's all.
Point well taken. All right, where are we? Councilmember Candell has a motion.
Now, instead of a motion, I'm going to throw something out there for a little discussion. Would we feel more comfortable saying that the structures that are currently up can stay up while we're having this discussion, but the ones that have been taken down cannot be put back up until we have some type of design review? And we'll try to put it over for a short period of time so that we can get some design review from other cities.
I think we're really just talking about the left bank, right? Because Pico has to be removed for the other paving project.
Well, Ruli's is down now.
Ruli's is down. But
So so I'm saying maybe we should have by the time they put theirs back up, we should have some standard in place so they don't put it back up and then we have to take it down.
well, my point is we're only talking about one that's still standing that would stay standing. Because Pico will have to be removed for the
So
upcoming
is
paving.
left bank the only structure that's still standing at this point?
So there are the two on-street parklets that exist right now are Pico and Left Bank. And Peak, as the mayor
It's gonna be
said,
removed.
Pico's has to be removed once we start our project. So the Public Works Director hasn't set that removal date with Pico yet, but they're talking about it. So that's coming. The Left Bank on Side Street on Ward, it's already been paved, so they're not really in that particular problem.
So you were going to make a motion?
Can
Go
can I
ahead.
just ask a question of Julian also? In the year and a half or 2 years that we've had, the parklets have been up, were there any safety complaints that as they moved into the traffic lane, were there any? Do we feel like we had any safety issues with them?
Safety complaints, nothing that I can recall that came through our office, no.
Okay.
We had some accessibility concerns, but the business owners worked with us on those.
Yeah.
So I guess, and again, just for discussion, my thought is that once a parklet is taken down, we don't put it back up until we have some type of design review so that it's put up. You know, again, we have to decide we want parklets back. We haven't even crossed that bridge yet. But if they're going to be put back, that they're put back with some design standards, I'm hesitant to say that a currently existing one that's up has to be taken down until we decide if we want parklets there and if we do, what they should look like. That's kind of where I am right now, but I'm happy to listen to what everybody thinks.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember
maybe 20 minutes ago, I asked to call the question on the two proposals that were made by staff. I would request the council to consider a vote on each of those proposals at this time. I have no idea what motion is currently on the table. So we've had a lot of discussion. That's great. That's fine. But I think in the interests of clarity for the public, it is important for us to make a decision on staff's recommendation. So
Do you have a motion on one of the questions?
I would be happy to, since I don't see anyone, unless Mr. Candell would like to make a motion. But I didn't quite understand what the motion was. So I would like to make a motion not to provide an extended expiration date for the COVID-19 outdoor dining permits as proposed in item number 1. And I would like to move that we do direct staff to take steps to establish a parklet policy for consideration of temporary or permanent parklets or sidewalk bypasses in an appropriate time frame.
There's been a motion. Is there a second to the motion? I'll second the motion. Please call the roll.
So if I'm clear, your motion is to not extend the permits.
We're just voting on the first one. Let's
Oh, but
do
he-
one at
he
a
linked
time.
the two together.
Actually, I made a motion on both.
Okay.
Which is to approve the items that are presented by staff. And the motion on the first item, we can do them separately, I don't care. The motion on the first item is not to provide an extension of the expiration date. The motion on the second item is to direct staff to take steps to establish a parklet policy for consideration by the council. That's it.
And that can be done. You want to put any time encouragements on that to be quick or about the policy?
I would ask staff to tell us how long they think it should take. I don't think it actually should take that long, but I would give them the discretion to tell us.
And I, again, will second the motion. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Candell,
No.
Councilmember Hara,
Yes.
Councilmember Way,
No.
Vice Mayor Paulson,
No.
Mayor Hilmer.
Yes. But the motion fails.
All right, I will make a motion to extend the expiration of the COVID-19 outdoor dining permits for 3 months. 3 months. That would give us enough time to get some design review and, figure out if we want parklets, and if so, what we want them to look like.
And what are you allowing in the 3 months?
Well, let me ask, the parklets that were taken down, do we have a date when we expect them to be able to be put back up?
Depending on our final review of the street, it could be as soon as a week, but it could be that they don't make the June 30th deadline also. We won't know until we've completed all of our inspections, but it could be as soon as a week.
I am going to make a motion that, and I'm sorry, how long will it take for the design review? Like, if you want to get stuff from other cities, when will we have that?
Well, if we're just bringing you cities that have already adopted design standards, that can be pretty quick. But then the work of, are those acceptable to Larkspur? I can't predict how long that might take.
I'm going to punt to Councilmember Way and see if you would like to make a motion.
I guess
You
I'll,
already have one on the floor.
I guess I will editorialize. There's a reason all the other councils in
Have
Marin
extended
County
it.
are struggling with this question too.
I would like, okay, I will make a motion to extend for 90 days any parklets that are currently operating. And I would, part of that motion would be parklets that are down can put up a parklet, the old parklet that was up, with the understanding that once design review is passed, if they are not in conformance, they're going to have to take them down. That will be my motion.
If I could make a
I'm
friendly.
sorry, I
amendment.
didn't understand that in the slightest, but maybe.
Yeah.
I'll rephrase it. So I am making a motion to extend the expiration for 90 days with understanding that the parklets that have been taken down can be put back up. But I'm making it very clear that if they put it back up and it's not in conformance with our design review, when that happens, they would have to take it down and get into compliance.
A quick question to you, Scott. Is the intention that it would go on till the end of the year? Because you may want to put that into your motion. So I think what you're doing is you're trying to buy time here and still allow for the COVID, that I think the three council members are most focused on. But it's pretty open-ended to say design standards and then what? So should we say we extend for 3 months and then the design standards have to be in and we're done at the end of the year?
I'm gonna ask you to please don't ruin the character of the downtown for the 4th of July. Just don't do it. He knows what I'm talking about.
So Gabe, what is your, can you tell me what the motion is with your friendly amendment, Gabe?
Yeah, so I like what you said. We are tonight voting to extend for 3 months. And then
Guys,
we,
hey, guys, come on,
Gentlemen,
hey, guys.
take it outside.
Thanks. Go ahead, Gabe,
Yeah.
sorry.
yeah, and then at 3 months, that's a condition of design standards that any parklet that doesn't meet it has to meet it. But we're done with this program December 31st, 2022.
Well, I don't think we've crossed the bridge of whether we want parklets to be permanent or not. I mean, that's part of question number 2. And this is, so in my mind, the first question is, are we still in a COVID emergency where we want parklets to be there temporarily so that people who are suffering, the businesses suffer because of COVID, have a way to get customers? That's the first question. The second question is, on a more permanent basis, do we want to have parklets? And I don't think we've had that conversation yet. And I think that depends on design review. It depends on parking, and it's a much more complicated question. I think the simpler question is, do we want to extend it so that these businesses can still have outdoor dining? And if we do we want there to be some type of design review, and how long is that going to take? And what do we do in the meantime when we don't have design review?
Can I make a suggestion? This is why it's important to start with a fair approach to all the properties and bring it back in an organized fashion with an organized conversation. I'm sorry that those that will have structures up will have to take them down to create a level playing field to begin with, but that's the best way. That's really the only way this is going to sustain successful outcome.
And I respectfully disagree in the sense that I think we're going to have a level playing field in 3 to 6 months whenever we have our design standards. And the question is, do we have nothing during that period, or do we have it the way it is for that period? I think that's, we're talking about a very temporary period of time, is the way I'm looking at it.
I think if staff could bring design standards back to us in one meeting, for example, we could work something out so we're not ruining the downtown for several months.
So from what I heard from the vice mayor, he added to the end of December. Was that what you agreed to on your amendment? To his motion?
I didn't fully understand that. It was a 90-day extension, but the end of December, we would have design review. So I wasn't sure what would happen between the 90 days and end of December. Gabe, I didn't quite understand that.
Yeah, I think that I agree with your comments that we, have, the consideration of trying to let businesses run if COVID is surging. I just wanted to clarify that the motion that Councilmember Haroff made was, based on not going till the end of the year, not going beyond. I think a terminal date is not put into your motion at all. So I guess I'm gonna retract my comments because I think they're confusing the issue. So I think your motion then is to extend for 90 days, have design review standards, and then it seems like we'll have another meeting like this to decide question number 2. Is there a policy? Actually, question number 1. Will we go beyond the end of the year based on design standards? So I'm sorry if that's a little long-winded, but I'm just going to retract my comments and second your motion.
I would like to clarify also the statement that the acts we're taking are keeping the businesses open. What we're doing is providing free real estate for whatever reason. We're not in any way causing the businesses to be open or closed. So with that, there's been a motion and a second.
But to that point, we're also providing community spaces. We're providing a more livability, as Eric was saying. We're also getting things that are intangible, which may be that sense of community and that sense of opportunity for people to gather. So
I think we've heard both sides of that
Yes, we
discussion,
have.
from the parking side and from the property.
Mr.
business
Mayor,
owners
I would
side.
like to call the question again. Whatever the motion is, if it could be restated in a clear way that the public and members of the council can understand, because I don't think I can.
Would the maker of the motion please restate the motion?
The motion is to extend the expiration of the permits for 90 days and to direct staff to come back and we'll give more direction, specifics of what we're looking for, but to come back with some information before that 90 days so we can have an informed decision.
So that's the end of September. So it's 90 days from the end of when the permit is expired, which is June 30th.
Yes.
Is that correct?
And I just want to clarify that that motion does not include the addition of design standards for temporary. Because since under number one, we're talking about temporary parklets. So you're removing the design standards for the temporary parklets and just proposing to extend it for 90 days. I'm sorry.
Correct.
Propose a friendly amendment that we include temporary standards.
I'd be fine with that, but what are those standards? I mean, I don't think we can
Whatever we can put
spontaneously.
together in the now time crunch we're under.
All right, so why don't we do this? I'm going to make a motion that we continue this and that we direct staff to come back with temporary design standards that we can talk about and hopefully come to an agreement before June 30th so that we can try to get this resolved. Let me ask, does staff feel that that is realistic, that we'll be able to have design standards within 1 to 2 meetings, and then we can see if we can all agree?
Again, if we just look at design standards that have already been adopted from other cities, then yes, that can be brought to you rather quickly. Probably not for June 1st, but easily for June 15th.
Just to clarify one thing, that would mean that any business that had previously had a parklet in place would until June 30th be able to continue their application process to restore that. But they would be doing it at the risk of not in compliance with future design standards for temporary parklets. Is that the intention of the motion?
Yes.
Sorry, we're going to throw all these questions at you at the last minute, Councilmember Candell. Is your motion limited to businesses that have already been issued temporary permits or
Are there businesses that have applied for temporary permits that are in the process now, right now?
speculatively, I think there are 1 or 2 businesses that might apply if they think that there's a chance to get one, that they've been waiting to see how this will go, but I can't say for sure. So I might encourage you to limit the scope to the existing permits just till we get through the review period.
I will take that advice, and that will be the spirit of the motion.
Can I further confuse this issue? In the staff report, the COVID-19 permits in Larkspur do include ones that do not have parklets. Are we, like, for instance, Amalfi Restaurant, farmhouse? Are we?
So they have emergency conditional use permits to give up off-street parking so they could operate table service in their parking lots.
So that's not part of this conversation at all, even though they do have ones that are set to expire on 6/30.
They have, that's a separate conversation
Yeah.
I need to have with those individual businesses. I think the only one that may want to have that conversation is probably Amalfi. The one out at Larkspur Landing, I think, has rendered itself moot. I don't think they're utilizing it anymore. So who did you mean?
It has Burritoville, Silver Peso, Roman Antica, Farmhouse, and Amalfi are listed in the staff report.
So Roman Antica would probably like to continue to have more tables than they normally would have. Peso already dismantled their beer garden that they had set up temporarily. Amalfi, I haven't checked lately to see if they're seating anybody anymore in the parking lot. No.
So essentially it's 3. It's Pico, it's Ruli, and it's Mags. And Left Bank, 4.
Those are your
The 4 main, okay.
ones, yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question. It is dawning on me that this is the only thing on today's agenda. We're going to put this to another agenda, and there are going to be another 8 to 10 things on that agenda. and we are not going to have the time that we have today to try to hash through this and work it out. I would be okay trying to work this out tonight if everybody, I know, Kevin, you made a motion, you want to move past this, but I just see this being jammed on an agenda and trying to get it done from 9:45 to 10 o'clock on a
So
Wednesday. I just,
what is it is to be hashed out tonight?
tonight, it seems like, well,
I think at a minimum, we need to let them come back with some, what other people are doing for temporary standards.
Yeah, I would chime in, Scott. I think the discussion was robust tonight. You know, we've been talking about parking, aesthetics, COVID, businesses. I think the design standards, and if, you know, we're not going to get it, if we had more parking information, a parking study, that'd be great. But I think if we can agendize this on June 15th, I'll feel more informed, and I think we might make a better decision.
Is that a motion? Gabe?
Well, you know, I meant, yeah, I guess this has been a long discussion. Yes, I'll make that a motion. I guess I move that we make the final vote on items 1 and 2 on tonight's agenda with the additional design standard information at our June 15th meeting.
let me ask a quick question before that's seconded. My understanding is Catherine has just said she is not going to be here at that meeting, which unfortunately would leave 4 members, which leaves the chance of not resolving it higher. Is there a chance we could do another special meeting or something like that when Councilmember Way would be able to be present?
We'd be happy to poll the council and try to find a.
That's wedding
a
week. I've
date.
already announced months ago that I'm out. I'm out for wedding
So,
week.
We can certainly find a day.
Okay, can we do that? Okay. All right. With that in mind, I would second that motion.
What's our motion?
Motion to continue to June 15th with us.
I think it's
punt.
continue to a date to be determined.
Okay, to a date to be determined with temporary standards included in the new information to be brought back. There's been a motion and a second. Please call the vote.
Councilmember Candell,
Yes.
Councilmember Hara,
Yes.
Councilmember Way,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Paulson,
Yes.
Mayor Hilbert.
Yes. The motion passes unanimously. So that concludes the item this evening. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
I would move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Without objection, we're adjourned.
Thank you all.